Today on Dub World, I'll be installing a fuel pump on a 1969 VW Beetle. You're going to need a few tools for the job. You're going to need a ratchet with a 13mm socket and an extension, preferably one that has a wobble end. Does not need to be as long as this one, but one that will work. You're also going to need a flathead screwdriver, possibly a ratcheting screwdriver, and some gasket material such as this one. Doesn't have to be this brand, but you need something. When it comes time to remove the fuel lines, you definitely do not want your car like this with the back end facing down, because gravity will feed the fuel line and you will have fuel pouring out and not stopping. I have this car parked at an angle like this. The tank is not full, so the likelihood of fuel coming out is pretty slim. I've done this hundreds and hundreds of times, and this is why I do it this way. I would recommend to you, if it's your first time, you may want to get yourself a pair of locking pliers so that you can pull the line off and crimp it, make sure fuel doesn't come out. Or you can get yourself a small bolt to stick into the fuel line and keep the fuel from coming out. Either way, you want to prepare just in case you have fuel coming out. Now, you pull this line and it seems to just be pouring non-stop, just plug it right back in and then you'll have to deal with the issue. But we want to make sure safety is number one here. Okay, so fuel pump I ordered from CIP1. As you can see here, the part number says it fits 1200 to 1600 cc Beetle. There's a part number here, says type 1 to 73, and pretty much what that means is that it's a fuel pump designed for a generator car, which is what this has. I have the fuel pump flange here, or stand as some people call it. Now if you're going to order one of these, please do yourself a favor, order the OEM one. This is OE quality. It is actually a Volkswagen part. I don't know if you can see the VW Audi part number. I ordered one of their replacement ones and one of these just to check out the quality of the two. The other one was so poorly made, the fuel pump rod, which goes right in here, would not fit. So they gave me credit for it. So I will not use anything but these original ones. It's worth spending the extra few dollars. That piece goes right down here. These tend to crack. A lot of times they break off inside the engine. Not fun. I don't replace them every time, but most of the time it's really up to you. You know, sometimes you could be creating more trouble for you if you replace it and it breaks. So we'll see what happens when I take this off. Pump itself, you will see there are different styles. Does not look like that one. This is more of an original equipment pump. It actually is rebuildable, but I went with this one here, which looks to be a made in China pump. A lot of times you get these pumps and you think to yourself, okay, what's the in and what's the out? This one here actually has arrows, which is kind of cool on it. Arrow pointing in, arrow pointing out. This one here, this is the inlet, that's the outlet. If you take your pump off or get ready to put a new one on, I'm not sure what is what. Hopefully I have a little photo I can put in the video and show you the different style pump. Basically, if you push in here, put your finger against one of these, push in here and pull. You can feel which one has the suction, which one doesn't. Okay. And worst comes to worst, if you put this together and your car won't run, you probably have the lines on wrong. So the fuel pump comes with two gaskets. which is nice to have. This flange does not come with a gasket, so if you're ordering it, you got to order the gasket separate. These gaskets, the one that has the big hole actually goes on the bottom. One with a little hole goes on the top to match that fuel pump area right there for the push rod to go through. So if you're putting this together, it'd be like this in the car. Alright, so if you have clamps on here, obviously you need to undo the fuel line. In this case, you could use a flathead screwdriver, or you can use a little socket on here. Fuel lines were just replaced on this a few months ago, so I won't be changing those out. If you want to get the distributor cap, just vacuum line out of your way, you can do that too, give you a little more room. Actually, you know what, let's just do it. Cap just clips on. Pop it off out of the way. Now, obviously you're going to be messing with fuel when you pull this off, so it can spray out. I'm going to get a little rag and just set it here just in case. And you definitely want to make sure your key's not on. It's just, again, you've got electrical around here. You don't need to start a fire. First thing I'll be doing is removing the fuel lines, and then I'll be removing the bolts for the fuel pump. And sorry here, we're running out of light. I had to take a momentary break and to help my wife, and so here we are. So you don't want any fuel getting in there. Now, being this is the carburetor side, it will leak out some, or it should. We'll see. May spray. Oh, no, look at that. Actually, nothing. Okay. Well, just want to get it out of the way. Now, this side is the inlet side. Very possible we're going to have fuel leaking out here. The car is parked at an angle, so hopefully it won't be pouring out. If that's the case, then I'll have to stop it. We'll see. Well, nothing out of there. It's probably because I haven't started it in several days, so that's a good thing. So we didn't have anything come out. Now, it is possible when you remove it, because that push rod may be pushing on the pump, it may spray a little fuel out. So let me just kind of cover this up a little bit. Get it in the way. Got kind of a long, wiggly socket extension here. Just starting with the back one. Now, it should have a washer on it. And I'd say be careful when you remove it that you don't drop the washer and get it down behind the pulley. That can happen. Not a big deal. Just get a magnet. I kind of set these out of the way here. Alright, and you can see nothing squirted out of the pump. That washer. Anyways, now the pump should be totally free, as you can see. Depending on your vehicle, you can have a situation where the pump could hit here. I have a 63 Beetle that originally had a 12-volt generator put on it, and then it was converted to an alternator, and still had the generator fuel pump, which made it a little more difficult to get out, but it's fine. So you're just going to pull this off, and there you go. You can see in here, you can see this is old, you can see the wear on it. These are supposed to be greased inside. And I'll show you when you're looking at a pump, and you can see in here, you're going to look at this little foot here, and you're going to look at how much space there is between that and the bottom of the fuel pump. There is a long fuel pump rod and a short fuel pump rod. You got to make sure you have the right one. If you don't, it's not going to work. So you want to make sure your pump matches up, or you have the correct rods to go in there. Now the large paper gaskets right on top here, pretty crusty in here actually. See that gasket? Now there's doesn't appear to be any leaking, any oil leaking from the base. I don't see any cracks. When you put this on, you're going to see at the bottom here, it's not going to go flush down, and that's because that fuel pump rod is laying on that little finger in there. When you bolt it, you can hear it. So that's actually pushing against the pump. When you do bolt this down, you want to be really careful. If you tighten it too tight, you can actually crack that flange, which you want to avoid. If you're replacing the fuel pump flange down here, or the base, you want to make sure before you put it in that your rod goes through here nice and smooth. If you buy one of the aftermarket ones, I almost guarantee it will not work. I ordered these from CIP1. I ordered the original one, which they say is the OE equivalent, and then I ordered the regular aftermarket one. So here's their one that they call the quality. That's their part number. I think this was $5.99 when I bought it. $4.99, $5.99, something around there. The other one was maybe $2.99. I ordered them both just to see what the quality would be like. The other one, you could not pass the rod through. It was that defective. The hole was off center. Down here was all messed up. They credited me back, thankfully, for it. So my recommendation is, if you're replacing this, go with the one that says OE. This happens to be original VW. I don't know if you can see that in the light, but there's the VW Audi sign, part number over here. That is factory Volkswagen right there. The one that's in the car has the VW emblem on it only, so that should be the original one. When you get the fuel pump off, most of the time I would recommend replacing the base just in case, because if it's old like this one, it's going to be really brittle. A lot of times these will break right about here inside the engine case. So when you go to pull this out, guess what? All you've got is this, and you got the rest jammed inside the engine. I looked at this really well. I don't see any cracks in it. I tried to see if I could lift it off. It doesn't want to move. And to be honest with you, I don't want to risk breaking it. If I break it, then we have the pieces in there, then we have a whole nother thing. So I'm not going to replace the base right now. I may do that at a later time. So we're just going to replace the pump. Now, as I mentioned, this pump came with both gaskets, which is nice. So I've got the one that would sit on the bottom, and then the one that I need for the top. So I'll be saving that for later. I was looking at this. I don't see any grease in here. I normally like to put a little bit of grease inside there to take care of that little foot. Put a little wheel bearing grease in there. Now, oil does come up, and I don't know if you can see it, but oil does come up through here and lubricates this. Doesn't really get up inside of the pump. You can see here, it's pretty dry looking inside there. It's not supposed to be spraying oil up in there, but that's why you want to grease it some sort. These do not last forever, but as you can see, this one is an old original style pump, and it was working, but it was leaking fuel out of the side here. So these rebuild kits probably run about $40 for this. This is not an original Volkswagen pump. At least it doesn't have the VW logo. Matter of fact, made in Italy. So this is an aftermarket pump, so it's been replaced at one time. So I don't want to spend the $40-some to rebuild it. This one, I'm not sure how much it was from CIP1, as I bought a few different things from them, but I'll try to let you know what it was. Now, way back in the day, I was always taught to use this nice little Permatex for gaskets. This is a gooey liquid, which I just dab on the surfaces here. Oh, lovely. We got a love bug that flew in here and landed. These things are everywhere in Florida this time of year. You don't need to put a lot on here. You just need to make sure that the gasket's going to seal and you don't have anything leaking out. And you know what? I forgot to check the gasket with the hole for the rod before I did this, which is something I always do because you never know, the gasket may actually not be cut right and the rod may be restricted. Yep, and there we go. See that? I didn't check and it's restricted. Now I got to pull this off. These are the things you learn when you do this job. Never take it for granted that something fits correctly. You can see the gasket. Now, what I'm going to do is I kind of wipe this off a little bit. I'm going to get myself a little razor knife and I'm going to trim this so that it fits well. Look at that. We've invited problems already. That's the fun we have dealing with aftermarket parts. So I've got a little X-Acto knife here. I'm just ever so gently kind of scraping this hole to be a little bit bigger. There you go. So I want it to fit through there smoothly and not drag. So perfect. We're ready to reassemble. I'm going to put a little grease on the fuel pump itself and we'll go from there. So if you've done the wheel bearings on your car before, you're familiar with wheel bearing grease. This is a high performance wheel bearing grease. This is what I'm going to use to lubricate the pump in here. So I just have it on this little brush and I'm just gonna stick it in there. You can see trying to get inside the spring that's in there. Just a little dollop. I'm gonna clean this off. So we're gonna have to put more gasket sealer on our flange just to double check. Try to avoid getting on the threads if possible. You don't want to get it in the hole for the fuel pump rod either. Rod's clean. No issues. Like I said, you can take steel wool. This one doesn't have any issues on it. Nice and clean. Again, make sure it works nice and free. Now we're going to pump a little bit of the gasket sealer bottom of the pump here. You can see it's very light, not gobbing it on. Just enough to seal it, keep it from leaking in case any oil gets up in there. That's pretty much it. I'm gonna put this in here, tighten it back up. Our washer's on. And as I mentioned before, you're gonna have to push down on this because of that rod. May need to do that just to start these nuts. One of the things I didn't mention is that because the fuel pump that you replace may look different, the design may be different, doesn't mean it's the wrong pump. Really, it comes down to that size on the bottom of the pump for the little pumping finger and the rod that's in your engine. So you've got a long rod, you got a short rod, they've got to match the fuel pumps. Doesn't matter what it looks like here, but it definitely matters what it looks like down there. So one of the things you may be faced with when changing these pumps, you could have a situation where your fuel lines are no longer long enough, or they may be too long. So you may need extra fuel lines. So again, if you're going to change the pump, if you haven't changed the lines recently, change those hoses because it's a cheap investment. You get about a meter of fuel line for around 10 bucks. You can do everything. This car has a filter that's under the tank, so there's no filter in the engine compartment. On this pump, that's the in, this is the out. So it looks like we're probably going to be okay with the hoses, but we'll go from there. Let me tighten up everything. The other thing too is you may, depending on how your pump is built, it's possible that one of the inlets or outlets may be in the way of you using your tools to install this. So you want to just get these snug. If you do them too tight, you will definitely break this base. So it looks like this fuel line is pretty much perfect. So I'm checking to see if there's any issue with this possibly coming off. Looks good here. So once you get everything installed, you're going to want to make sure that your fuel lines are tight. If you're running clamps, make sure your clamps are tight. These are the original style braided German fuel hoses. The purpose for the braiding on here is it acts to hold the hose onto the fuel pump and onto the carburetor. That's going to hold this on. It's going to be really hard to get these lines off. If you want to run clamps on them, more than welcome to do that. Doesn't hurt. The last thing you want is a fire in the engine compartment. Just want to give you a side-by-side comparison of the aftermarket fuel pump flange versus the OE original Volkswagen one. These are the two that I ordered from CIP1. The one on my left by my thumb is the aftermarket one. The one on the right side is the OE VW. You can see here, these are oil passages on the side. Look at how rough this is on the aftermarket one compared to the Volkswagen one. Size difference is considerable. If you look at the aftermarket one on the left, the hole is not centered. The Volkswagen one, it is centered. The real big deal is trying the push rod itself. Yep, that's as far as it'll go in the aftermarket one. Does not even fit through the hole in the top. As you can see, Volkswagen one fits in nice, moves nice and smooth. This is the difference between junk and quality.